Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Sarah-Anne-Shockley. And she's here today to share with us her new book, The Pain Companion. Now, Sarah-Anne has been dealing with chronic pain since 2007, and she offers fellow pain sufferers a compassionate and supportive guide for living with pain that can be used alongside their ongoing medical or therapeutic healing treatments. She's a regular columnist for Pain News Network and a regular contributor to The Mighty, which is a 1.5 million member online community for those living with chronic illness and pain. So let's welcome to the show Sarah-Anne-Shockley.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
What a joy it is to have you here. And gosh, what a profound book. And congratulations. It just got released.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good.
I'm really excited about that.
Oh, I bet. I mean, having a new book come out is such an exciting thing, especially one that's helping so many people. You're getting rave reviews all over the place.
Yeah. And, I'm sure you're pretty well aware we have what they're calling a pain epidemic in this country right now. So many people are experiencing pain, and particularly chronic pain that just won't leave. I think the National Institutes of Health said that there's 1 out of 3 Americans are in pain right now. So that's millions and millions of people experiencing pain. So it's not a very happy topic on one hand, but on the other, it's really, really important. And so many people are living in pain and feeling isolated and alone. So that's what I'm trying to address here.
Well, and I know, because you share about this, in your book as well, but this is all prompted from your own personal journey.
Yes, it is. I'll tell you a little bit about that. In 2007, I was diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome, which is a really painful condition. It's a collapse between the collarbones and the first rib. And quickly, to describe it quickly, there's muscles and nerve ganglia and arteries that go through there, and they get squished, and it's incredibly painful and very debilitating. So basically, overnight, my life just stopped. I couldn't do anything. I had to stop working, couldn't do anything that I normally did for pleasure, and spent years in really, really awful pain, and just barely being able to get up in the morning and kind of stumble to the bathroom and try to take care of my son. I was a single mom. And just getting him off to school was about what I could handle in a day, and then I'd kind of recover from that and then go pick him up later and try to find some energy to make a meal. So I'm very familiar with living with ongoing pain. And I started by, at first I thought the pain was just going to go away. I mean, we all do, right? It's just going to heal. Mm-hmm. Everything's going to fix itself. And after about the first year of being in pain, I still kept thinking it was going to go away. And one of my doctors said, Sarah, this isn't going to get better. And I just was floored. Like, what? Me? What? That doesn't happen. And I fell into, depression and hopelessness for a while. And I had tried a number of things to heal, lots of different alternative therapies, whatever the doctors had to offer. They don't have much to offer with this particular condition. I tried pain medications that actually made things worse, not better. They had really bad side effects. So I was pretty much left to my own devices to try to figure out how to live with this and how to heal it. And as I said, I was a single mom, so I didn't have a lot of resources financially, and I didn't have a lot of energetic resources. I was really exhausted all the time. So my solution was to just live with it. I decided, well, okay, I'm not going to fight it. That's not working, so I'll just put up with it. And I did that for years, just being really stoic and deciding, okay, I'll just ignore it and keep going. And it was better than being depressed, and it was better than fighting, but it wasn't getting better. And finally, a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago now, I've been in this process for 10 years now, I stopped and said, I cannot live the rest of my life like this. I can't do this. I cannot be in pain every minute of every day and not have a life. I'd not be able to do anything I enjoy and just barely kind of stumble through the day. And I couldn't use the computer hardly at all. I couldn't barely hold anything with my hands, so I was really limited in what I could possibly do. So I thought, well, heck, in the past I've used journaling to write about emotional things. So, and there's a lot of emotional pain that goes with living in chronic pain, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I thought, well, why don't I, as little as I can, why don't I write the pain out of me? I can try that. So I started, I could only do 1 or 2 sentences at a time. I could barely use my hands. I could hardly, bend my neck down. And it took me 2 years to fill 2 spiral notebooks, and I just ranted about pain, how awful it is to live with it, how I hated it. And then I moved into what it had done in terms of affecting me in my life, how it affected who I was, how I saw myself. And I also started writing letters to pain directly. Dear pain, what are you doing? Why are you still around? What the heck is this about? Why can't I heal myself? And I also let pain write back to me. I kind of wrote letters that I thought pain, I sort of sat in pain's feet, so to speak. And I was surprised by what pain was saying to me. And some of it was incredibly compassionate, and some of it was about how pain was part of me, trying to speak to me. And this whole process was really profound for me. I was just trying to vent, but I also went back and read everything I'd written eventually. It was like a couple of years later, as I said. And that process of reading what I'd written to myself about pain was really, it was intense, and it was also shifted things a lot because I saw myself. It's like I witnessed myself living through the pain. And it was hard. I cried a lot. But it also helped release something, emotionally, certainly. But also I noticed that the pain was lifting a little bit. I think it was because I felt more relaxed about it. Something helped release. But I realized that it was really important to be seen in pain. It was really important to see myself and to witness myself and to almost like hold myself with more compassion. And I also saw through the writing that there was things there for other people. I had looked for books about the experience of living in pain, and I couldn't find any. And there were certainly lots of books about, doctors talking about treatments and here's a protocol and here's my diet and that kind of stuff. But I couldn't find any material about what it was, did other people experience the same thing? Were other people feeling as isolated as I was? Did other people feel ashamed that they were in pain? I didn't know. And when I read what I'd written, I realized there's something here for others. So I turned it into the Pain Companion. And eventually what I did was I basically have 3 main sections that I work with where I talk about the really intense emotions that come up when you're living with chronic pain that most people don't talk about. I think doctors may not even know about them. The hopelessness, the loneliness, the anger, the terror, all the things we have to face every day when we're living with pain and ways to work with those. And then I talk about changing the way we relate to pain and seeing it differently, because that's what happened for me, and how that affects pain levels and how that affects how we feel about ourselves and provides an opening into a more positive way of living with pain and also healing pain. And then I also work with breath and awareness and how that affects pain levels. So all of that came out of my experiences of kind of experimenting with every possible non-medical approach I could come up with.
Yeah, bringing that all together. Well, and it's interesting because a lot of times, and you're so right, because I've had a friend that went through a major surgery, and she was telling me, it's like the doctors took care of my body, but they don't really prepare you for like the depression and all these other things that come with it that everyone goes through. And, and a lot of times people are afraid to talk about that.
That is so right. That's absolutely true. And many of my readers talk about that they're so relieved that somebody finally gets them and sees what they're going through. And I think part of that, we live in a pain avoidant culture. We aren't brought up to talk about pain in a constructive, healthy way. We don't want to see it. We don't want to know about it. We want to push it away. We want to get rid of it as soon as possible. And some of those responses are, of course, really natural. Of course, we don't want pain. Who does? It's really uncomfortable. It's not something that we want to invite in. But once we're in it, once we have it, we need constructive, positive ways to work with it. And not talking about it and not talking about all the emotional ramifications isn't helpful. It's not healthy. And so we tend to push it away, push it down. The only response we are given is to fight it and to medicate it. And that's all we're given. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, particularly short-term pain. We can just medicate it and, we break the ankle and the ankle heals. But even coming out, like your friend coming out of surgery, we might be in pain for a few months at a time, and that is really intense. It doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're in pain every single moment of every single day, you can feel so alone and so distressed about that. And it doesn't, you lose your sense of having a future. It's hard for you to even imagine you're going to come out of it. And that's the kind of stuff that's in sort of the companionship, really, that I offer people. What do you do? How do you live with that? How do you go through that? And is there anybody in there with you? And I offer a lot of ideas about how to stay engaged with life and engaged with yourself, even though you are passing through what I think of as this landscape of pain. And that's also one way to think about it that I offer people is pain is a landscape that you're passing through. It's not you. It's not all of you, even though it's, in a sense, part of you. You're walking through a space, and it includes pain right now, but it's not necessarily always going to be there. You got to keep moving. And if you sit down and get depressed and feel sorry for yourself or whatever, you might have to do that for a while, get through that. But then you stand up and you keep walking. And pain may have to walk right with you, but you're moving through it and moving beyond it.
And I love how you talk about that pain is a landscape. No one is really looking at it that way. And usually a lot of people will identify their pain as themselves. And so it's really hard for them then to get beyond, like, I'm dealing with this pain and that you tell me if I'm wrong here, but I would assume like you've got frustration and anger, and I'm sure there are tons of other emotions that are coming up that is all kind of bundled into that.
Yes, absolutely. And we have to deal with just incredible amount of things that come up that most people who haven't lived with chronic pain don't know about. And you mentioned a few of them, and certainly also certainly anger, but also fear and terror. And a lot of people in chronic pain wake up in the middle of the night with night terrors and the stresses, because when you're in pain, you're probably not operating at full speed. So you may have to pull back from how many hours you work, or maybe you can't work at all. And there's the stresses of trying to figure out what you're going to do financially and how you're going to be covered. And then you have to go to doctor's appointments and figure out what treatments you're going to take. And sometimes when you're in pain, you are under more stress when you really need to be under less stress so you can heal. So all of that is part of the package, too. It's really, really difficult.
I can see where that would kind of spiral,
It does. It can spiral downward. And it's a kind of a paradox, because we are, in a sense, alone in our pain, in the sense that only we know what we're going through. I mean, that's true for all of us in our lives. We experience our private experience. On the other hand, we don't have to stay isolated when we're in pain. There are ways to re-engage with life, even in small amounts, to invite friends over to see you, to go out to find a tribe. There are other people out there. There are so many people dealing with this. But when we're in our own space, we think we're the only one. And there's sometimes when we can't leave the house, there are many, many groups online that connect with each other and support each other through this. And there are ways to I always thought of it as kind of throwing lines out back into the world, because you feel so alone, and you need some ways to hook back into the world. And it might be just going out or just part of an event, or going out to dinner with friends, but you can only come for the dessert because you only feel, you feel so bad. So you also have to kind of train the people around you to understand what you're going through. And this takes a little bit of effort because people don't necessarily want to talk about pain. But we have to learn how to talk about pain. We have to learn how to express it and learn how to inform others of what we need without appearing or feeling needy. There's a way of we can just say, hey, I'm going through this and I need some help here. Would you be willing to, whatever it is, come over to my house once a month and help me with my cleaning? Or would you be willing to meet me for a really short, I can only go out for like half an hour, but I'd really love to have a cup of tea with you for half an hour. And it's really hard for people who aren't in pain to get that. Why can't you just do what you normally do? Well, we can't. So part of what we have to do, and those of us who are in pain, is to express what's going on for us, express our needs, and express our limitations. And sometimes that's really hard. Sometimes people in our lives are angry with us at not being okay. It's really hard. But we often get disbelieved. How can you be in pain that long? How come you're not better yet? So we have to deal with things like that. And unfortunately, it sort of falls on us to educate people around us about what it's like to be living with chronic pain. But on the same, sort of on the same vein of that, I think it's really, really important for people in pain to begin to express what's going on, not just in terms of setting limitations and boundaries, but also for yourself. It's really important not to keep everything bottled up. And that doesn't mean you have to explode at other people. I don't mean that. But I mean finding a way to express through journaling or through dance or through, if you can move like that, or through doing a little bit of art or, drawing, painting, anything expressive where you can express what it feels like to be in pain. Sometimes those things are going to turn really dark, but it's really helpful to move that because when we begin to express, we begin to release a little bit. And we're releasing some of the difficult emotions, but we're also, oddly, some of the pain starts to move too, I found. And I think part of that is that there's an actual physiological response when we start to express, where we begin to relax, we begin to breathe differently. When you breathe differently, the air can flow, the blood can move. There's an actual releasing of contraction, releasing of some of the holding and the tension that we do when we're in terrible pain. So I think it's really important for us, for those of us who are in pain, to learn how to express what we're going through. And we're probably going to have to teach others to learn how to listen.
Well, and I think it's so important that we're having this discussion because, when people are in pain and people who have a loved one or a friend or they know somebody, a coworker who's in pain, there's not a whole lot that it's like there's really no discussion that goes on, or sometimes they're not even sure what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And for those, listeners who know people, most people know somebody who's in pain. And some listeners are probably experiencing pain themselves. But for those people that are either working with people in pain or are family member or know somebody in pain, it's important to begin to start this discussion and start this spreading of information of what it's like. So just to understand that people in pain aren't doing it on purpose, that's for sure. They're trying as hard as they can to heal every day, and in fact, that's all they're doing, is trying to heal every day. But for most people in pain, just slogging through the day takes all of their energy. So people in pain tend to be sleep-deprived, don't sleep very well. We tend to have a foggy brain because of that and because of the pain, so we don't always think. We kind of might act a little out of it. We don't respond as quickly as we used to. We forget things. We look like we don't care, but it's because most of our energy is going to just being in pain. It takes a tremendous amount of energy just to be in pain. A lot of the body's healing energy is, it's trying to heal itself. And part of this, too, is I talk a lot about letting go of resistance to pain, which is not very popular at first because, wait, why wouldn't you resist pain? Why wouldn't you fight it? That we want to get rid of it. But a lot of energy goes into when we resist pain and we fight it and we try to push against it. that takes up a lot of our energy. So when we can begin to let go and release that a little bit, that frees up some more energy for healing. So I talk a lot about the way we see pain, changing the way we see pain and the way we interact with it into a more positive place. So rather than seeing pain purely as an enemy, we begin to see it as an ally. And rather seeing it as an invader, we begin to see it as, oh, pain isn't all of me. It's not the totality of me, but paradoxically, it is kind of part of me because it's in my experience. And what if pain was part of me talking to me? Pain is like a messenger. It's a signal. So what's it trying to communicate? What if I kind of turn toward pain instead of constantly pushing it away and just kind of started a dialogue with it? What are you doing here? What do you need? What would you like? Sometimes I talk to people about seeing oneself and seeing pain with kinder eyes, kind of turning towards the pain, because the pain is a part of you asking for attention in a certain way. So instead of fighting it, looking at it with compassion and kind of holding it with compassion and thinking of it almost like a little kid that has hurt themselves, kind of be softer with pain rather than pushing and trying to kill it and get rid of it. It's there. It's not moving. It must want something. So doing that kind of looking at it with softer eyes, with more compassion, helps it. It's again, it's sort of counterintuitive because you think if I look at pain and if I pay it attention, it's going to get worse, right? But actually it seems to be different. It seems that when we give attention a particular kind, when we give pain a particular kind of attention, rather softer rather than the kind of attention we tend to give it, which is fighting it, then it begins to kind of, almost like a person, it begins to relax. It's weird, but so many people have told me they've tried this and it has helped them to just see pain differently, and then it begins to relax. The body begins to relax around it. That's when healing can start, when you can start to shift a little bit. Because if you can shift your pain at all, it can start to heal. It's a signal that, oh, this can move, this can change. That's huge for people in pain.
Well, on that note, we are going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Sarah-Anne-Shockley in regards to her new book, The Pain Companion. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We've been speaking with author Sarah-Anne-Shockley in regards to her new book, The Pain Companion.
So, Sarah-Anne, my goodness, this has been such a powerful discussion. And I know that your book covers so much, and of course there's no way we're going to cover the entire book. I'm sure everyone wants to go out and pick up their own copy of The Pain Companion. But you also talk about meditation in your book. Mm-hmm. How does that play a role in all of this?
Well, it's very important. I use a kind of an awareness meditation. When I first was looking at can I sort of meditate while in pain, I tried to do a traditional form, which was sitting with my spine straight and deep breathing, and all of that made my pain go through the roof. So I couldn't do normal meditation. So I thought, how am I going to do this? I couldn't, I can't do deep breathing. I can't, what am I going to do for meditation? And I instead thought, well, I will use my awareness. I can move my awareness around instead of necessarily doing the breathing part in that way. But I did want to work with breath because breath is really important with meditation, and breath has so much to do with how the body heals. We need to move the breath through the body. It has to do with the blood flow. It has to do with, obviously, bringing things to the tissues. It's so important. So I began to work with breath, and I started to just, partly from my failed attempts to meditate, I noticed how I was breathing, basically, that deep breathing wasn't working. And then I said, I noticed that I was hardly breathing. It wasn't just that I couldn't breathe deeply. I realized, I'm breathing really shallowly. That's about the breath I can take is, really shallow breath, or I'm going to feel worse. And I also noticed that I was holding my breath a lot during the day. When my pain would spike, I just hold my breath. And I started to just become aware of breathing patterns and how pain affected my breathing and how the breathing affected my pain, both directions. And I noticed that I was, our first response often to pain is, when there's a sharp pain, we hold our breath, we contract, we pull in, and stop breathing. Or when we resume breathing, obviously we have to resume breathing, it's shallow and light, and then we'll hold our breath again a little bit later. And I noticed that, and I noticed also that I was in a way using my held breath as a wall against pain to kind of, if I hold it and I don't breathe, I can kind of push against the pain and I won't feel it as much. I don't think it really worked, but it's kind of a response that we just do. And I thought, well, how can I shift that? Is that the best way to be? And I thought, I'm going to do something opposite, totally counterintuitive. I'm going to go, and instead of pushing against the pain, I'm going to kind of release that and let my breath release a little bit. So I have a series of meditations I do, and I'll just talk through a couple of the beginning ones. And they're very, 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 very simple. They're more like awareness exercises than anything, and that involve, a number of them involve the breath. So I thought, well, what if I, instead of holding my breath, what if I just release it? And instead of pushing against pain, what if I kind of imagine sort of breathing into the space around pain? Like there is a space around pain. There's pain, and then there's some place where there's no pain. So I tried breathing into the space of no pain. And listeners can try that right now. Now, that might not even be in your body. Your whole body might be in pain. So the space of no pain might be outside your body. And again, this is awareness exercise. So sure, you're always breathing with the same set of lungs. But it does something interesting to imagine that you're breathing in and out of the space of no pain. And if you try that really lightly, you might notice that your pain shifts a little bit. Your experience of it shifts. Then I tried an experiment of breathing, in a sense, next to pain. Like, okay, what if I got closer to pain rather than pulling away from it? What would that do? And I found paradoxically that as I put my attention on pain and got, in a sense, closer to it, and again, this is just sort of with my awareness. So let's say my pain is in my neck. I would imagine, the worst pain. I would go to the place of the strongest pain. And I would just imagine kind of in my mind's eye, maybe a little version of myself even sitting next to the pain, just kind of being with it and just sort of breathing there, which is really not what we would do with pain. We want to be away from it. We want to run from it. We want to get rid of it. So doing the exact opposite and just kind of sitting with pain and breathing next to it and noticing how that felt. And at first, pain seemed a little more, I don't know if it seemed more painful, but the awareness of pain is higher because you're trying to ignore it a lot of the time. So at first it may feel like the pain is more, but then as you sit with it and kind of relax, it tends to just relax with you. And I tried various experiments of breathing next to pain and then imagining pain was breathing with me. And it all sounds really odd, but in a sense, it's you and you. When we push against pain, we're pushing against the part of ourselves that's trying to heal. And that's where I think we get into trouble. When we can't be with pain in a somewhat friendly manner, then we are trying to push away or reject or cut out part of ourselves that's asking for help. So I learned a lot from doing this. I learned a lot from just kind of sitting with my pain and being with it and letting it kind of just be there. Sometimes I would talk to it and I'd say, okay, what do you need today? And it might surprise me. It might need something really tender, or it might need me to just listen to it. I sort of let pain kind of express itself a little bit. And just be with that part of the self that is trying to heal, that is expressing through the pain. It's a very different way than we normally think about pain. And it takes a little bit of kind of getting over our maybe prejudice against pain to consider it as a positive force, as a possibility that it's part of our healing. And then I would have, I allow pain to kind of breathe with me. And another awareness exercise to do, another kind of little meditation like this, is to do something. Now, this is completely, again, counterintuitive, but I just experimented with everything because I was desperate, so I was going to try everything. So I thought, well, what if I, instead of pulling pain in, pulling it in, contracting, holding it in, stopping it, I thought, what if I just let pain do what it wanted to do? What if I just let pain sort of spread out and have more room, which sounds really wild, but what if I just let it move, like breathe, if I let pain breathe into the space around it and move into the space around it. And even just saying that, the pain I can feel starts to relax. It's like, okay, oh, I have room. And again, it sounds like the opposite of what it would be. But a lot of times when we start doing these things and giving pain more of what it's asking for attention, it's asking for kindness. I also talk about being loving towards your pain, kind of sending love to your pain, which also it seems like the opposite of what you want to do. Wouldn't pain stick around forever if I love it? Well, no. You're giving it what it needs to heal, right? So, hating it is when we hate things and we resist them, we're kind of, lock horns with it, and we're in this constant battle. So to really do almost the opposite of what you'd imagine sometimes, because it is not all of us, but it is kind of part of us. We don't define ourselves by pain. Sometimes we get lost in the identity of pain, and we want to come out of that. But it is something inside of us. It isn't, we are producing the pain. Our bodies are. So to accept that it's here. It's part of me. It has something to say. I don't really like it. Not what I really want to be doing right now. I got, acknowledge that. And here it is. here it is. How do I deal with what's already here? How do I be with that in such a way that I can be more positive towards it, be more loving towards it, and allow that seems to me that what my experience has been and what my readers' experience has been, that it opens up more avenues for healing. Instead of clamping down, we're opening up and we're allowing it. And this is, there's such a spectrum. We often, when we do from one end, sort of one extreme, we often run to the other extreme. So one extreme is fighting pain and hating it. And then a lot of people think, well, if you're not going to hate it, then you have to go all the other end of extreme and just accept it and give up and, don't do anything. So no, there's a middle path there. There's a nice balanced middle path where we're not fighting. We're not battling every single day, which in itself is really exhausting and uses a lot of our emotional, mental, and physical resources to do that. But we're also not giving up and giving in and saying, okay, well, I'll just live with it. That's what I did for years. That doesn't help either, in my experience. But we find that middle road where we're accepting, okay, pain's here. I don't like it. I got it. But it's not moving, so what can I do to work with pain? What can I do to be with pain differently? How can I move, down the road and I'm including pain in my experience, even though I don't want to, but okay, it's something, it's not leaving any other way, so let's move with pain and see what happens. And in that way, somehow it begins to loosen up. It begins to relieve things. It relieves a lot of stress. It begins to release a lot of energy back into the body that you've been using in fighting, which in itself is a huge healing force. So all these awareness meditations, the way of communicating with pain differently and the way of being with pain differently are really, really, they seem really small and they're subtle, but they're huge. They can make a profound shift in the way that we are in our lives, in the way we see pain, but also the way we see ourselves, the way we are in life.
I think it's so important that, we view ourselves differently, especially when we're dealing and working through a pain situation. And sometimes, like how you're saying, that's just the landscape of our new lives. But yeah. I so appreciate your willingness to try anything, because that's what it usually takes for someone to find the one thing that does work.
Yes, exactly. And with chronic pain, I'm not advocating that anybody stop doing anything else. Whatever works for anyone, use it. And whatever treatments you're doing that work, use them. Whatever medications work, use them. And if this helps, try this out as well. This isn't meant to replace anybody's treatment. It isn't meant to be the only way. This is just, this is things that have worked for me, things that have worked for a lot of people that I've worked with. Use that in conjunction with anything else, and you can pick and choose. There's a ton of ideas in the book. There's a lot of different ways of being with pain, and also lots of ways of mitigating the intense emotional states that we get in. So use whatever works, and don't let go of anything that doesn't work, because chronic pain is really complex. It's, when it sticks around for a long time, it gets enmeshed in our lives. Our emotions and our physiology kind of get all locked in together, and it's really hard for it to move. So I believe that the way that we heal chronic pain, sometimes it's a very long-term process in itself, but it involves a multi-tiered, a multi-leveled approach that needs to address every aspect of the person: emotions, physicality, mental, and spiritual. So we use everything we can find that'll help. Whatever helps move towards healing is, go for it. And if it doesn't work, just drop it, because it's going to take something that's multi-leveled to heal chronic pain, and it's going to not be overnight. I don't think anybody can promise cure for chronic pain right now. I don't know anybody that can. Despite some people's claims, it's not something that you can heal with one magic pill or one special diet or one thing that I've been able to find.
Yeah. Well, and And, somebody's pain is so personal and it's so different from the next person's pain that they have to try different ways of addressing it and find out what works for them, because what works for somebody else may not work for them, and they can have the same type of injury or diagnosis, anything.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. And that's part of why I recommend setting up a kind of a dialogue with pain and communicating with pain, because your pain is signaling to you personally. It's you talking to you. So that's absolutely true that whatever is going on in your life around pain is personal. It's something. It's definitely physically based, but it's also involved with lots of other aspects of the self. And so sometimes we can help the physical pain relieve itself by working with the emotional pain and emotional aspects. And sometimes we can help the physical pain lift when we deal with the mental, in terms of fears and anxieties and worries, and try to relieve those. So I totally advocate looking at it from all different angles and finding your own personal path through it. Really, it is a personal path. It's your journey. And sometimes, I know this is really, kind of difficult to know, but in my long time dealing with chronic pain, I've come to realize that sometimes pain is the path. It's not like a mistake, and it's not like, I've gotten off my path of life because I'm having to deal with pain. Sometimes it's just what we meet on the road, and it is part of our path. It's part of our spiritual journey. And it's not what we would have chosen. It's not the way we would most like to walk this path. But so many people are walking this road in pain that there's something there to it. It's something that perhaps we as a people, perhaps it's just part of the human journey sometimes. And, if you're in pain right now, know that almost everyone meets pain at some point in their life. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's emotional, but we're all dealing with it at some point. It is part of the human path. And, and not to feel like you're wrong for it.
Yeah, and I know because in your book you talk about pain being the teacher, and most people be like, what? What do you mean? Yeah. Pain's my path and pain's my teacher? How's that even a thing?
Well, and it's not what you really want, right? It's totally, we don't want pain to be on our path, and we don't want to think of pain as a teacher. And yet, if it's there, it's one of the things that we learn from. And I've found that pain comes with unexpected gifts, living with pain over time. And I've talked with so many people who have found this out, too. It's not a popular path. It's not one we would ever choose for ourselves. But if we find ourselves on it, we can begin to notice that it brings with it, really insight into life. It forces us to be closer to our inner self. If we're going to get through it, we have got to find our inner resources. We've got to connect with our strength and our tenacity. It teaches us how to be softer with ourselves. It teaches compassion towards the self and towards others. I've talked with so many people who realize, who gain so much more compassion for others after they've been in pain. And maybe that's the only way we can do it. I don't know. I don't have the answers to all of those, kind of metaphysical questions about why, what's the purpose of pain? Why do we have to have it? I don't know those answers. Those are the answers we have to kind of wrestle with and come up with on our own. But I do know even my son, who was about 10 when this came on, I felt really bad that I had to parent in pain. It was really heartbreaking. And I missed a lot of his young life, things that I wanted to do with him, camping and swimming and biking and active things. I couldn't do any of those. I felt really guilty and awful about that. And then over years, I kind of looked into the person he turned into, and he's this wonderful, compassionate man who is, young man, who is able to see into other people's lives in a way that many young people can't. And I thought, wow, something came out of this for him that I wouldn't have chosen that way. But he's compassionate, he's giving, he notices what other people are doing, and he also takes care of himself. He had to learn how to do that, so he's very centered. So, it's really unexpected, some of the gifts that come from this really kind of awful mentor, this awful teacher of pain, but you learn a lot.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, there's got to be so much that, and I love how you sharing about just the impact it's made on others, because it's so profound, the lessons that come from this. We may never know them all, but you could see from, you're talking about your son and just the changes that have, he's encountered. I mean, I'm sure he's growing up to be a very compassionate young man because of what he's seen you go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is the kind of path we don't consciously choose. But once we're on it, it's how do we make the best of it? How do we work with this, without sinking into despair? How can we turn this into something that is positive for us? And again, I think part of it too is this whole idea that we have in our culture that we're not supposed to ever be in pain about anything. And if we're in pain, we're wrong and we must have made a mistake. And that just doesn't seem to be so. Sometimes, we're just working with it, and it's something we're working with. And a lot of people who have had to meet misfortune in their life afterward talk about it or write about it and say, wow, that was just the most profound experience I've ever had, even though it was unfortunate, the house burning down or something happening to someone they love or something happening to them, and having to go through this intense journey where it calls on everything you've got to just be able to live through it. Somehow, in the end, we can pull a lot out of that we benefit from.
Well, it's really easy to see that, your book can be used for so many people going through whatever type of pain. It doesn't necessarily have to be chronic pain.
Well, yes, thank you for mentioning that. That's true. I've had people read it who have had problems with depression and don't have physical pain at all, and they said it really helped them. I've had people read it who have problems with addiction, with eating, anything that it seems to work or speak to any kind of either emotional or physical pain that just won't leave. The recalcitrant kind of pain that sticks around. And when you feel really bad about yourself for having that, this is what the book speaks to and helps you move through. So, yes, it does seem to work with people coming out, a lot of people having, surgeries with joint replacements, hip replacements and stuff, and coming out with a lot of pain for months at a time. It's helped people go through that, too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be ongoing pain. Yeah.
Well, I think that's so powerful, and I'm so glad that we've been able to take this time and talk about your book, The Pain Companion, because it's giving people a new way of living, because we still have to live, We want to be here, we want to enjoy life,
Exactly, yes, exactly. It's, we're still alive. Even when we're in pain, we still have a life, and that's something for listeners to remember, that if you're dealing with pain, it's still you. It's still your life. And not to cut yourself off from life, and not to cut yourself off even from yourself or to blame yourself. It's just the path you're on right now. It's just part of the path, but it's not all of who you are.
And I think I have time for one more question. Do you think blame becomes such a really big thing throughout all of it?
Oh, yeah. I think that's really important to talk about. It's at first it's easy. We get into blame where we might blame the condition, whatever condition we've got, or blame whatever situation we went through. We might blame the medical system for not helping us. But then if we stay in pain for a while, we can't move it, that often turns into self-blame. We really feel badly about ourselves. And that's so important to let that go, because there's no shame in being in pain. We feel it. We feel like we've made a mistake. We feel like we're wrong. We feel like we're a failure in life. And that simply is not so. It's just what we meet on the path. And it's it's got its purpose for being, and maybe we don't know what that is, and maybe we will never find out exactly why we had to go through this. But it's just the path we're on, and again, to sort of go through that sense of it's the landscape we're walking through. It's not us. It's not who we are. It's not the totality of our identity. But to let go of blaming anybody, that's for sure, because that's not helpful to healing, to hold that resentment, because that can turn into bitterness and resentment. And that, I feel, when we get into those kind of dark emotions, that helps lock the pain in place. It locks the emotions in, it locks the physical pain in place. So we want to let go of that. But absolutely letting go of the blame towards the self. And for many people, we have to ask for, and we have to accept a lot of help when we're in pain. And that can be, we can feel really ashamed of ourselves and blame ourselves for needing help. But to just know everybody has to have help at some point in life. And it's there. That's why we have these nonprofit groups, and different people are there to help people when we need it. So, and we give when we can give, and we receive when we need to. So do not feel bad about that either. Allow yourself to accept help when you need it.
Those are such important words. Well, and so Sarah-Anne, where can people connect with you, be part of your community, and learn more, not just about your book, The Pain Companion, but the other work that you're doing surrounding this topic?
Yes. The best place to go is my website, which is www.thepaincompanion.com. So that's easy. There you can find, I have a blog that I put out. I have free resources for people. You can connect. I have a YouTube channel. I make little kind of meditative, inspiring videos for people that are moving through pain, just like 1 minute, so you can go in and just experience feeling a little better with beautiful images and words. And I also am on Facebook, so you can find me there. That's also the Pain Companion. And I post there all the time, and I would love to hear from any listeners who would like to connect. You can just use the contact form on the website. I always love to hear from people, or you can sign up and get my blog sent to your inbox, and I love to hear comments from you that way too.
Oh my goodness. Well, what an important discussion. I'm so glad we were able to spend, today talking about this, and of course your book, The Pain Companion. Thank you so much, Sarah-Anne, for being here and taking time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. I've really enjoyed it. I really appreciate it. Thanks to all the listeners for tuning in.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah-Anne. It's been such a joy to spend this time with you. And of course, to talk about your new book, The Pain Companion. If you are looking to connect with Sarah-Anne, you want to send her an email, you can at her website, thepaincompanion.com. Her book's listed there, and of course you can find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all major retailers. You can also see The Pain Companion listed on the Moments with Marianne website. Just visit momentswithmarianne.com and click on Book Club. There you can see listed all the great listings of books for this entire year, which feature books that are in nonfiction, fiction, young adult, science, business, spirituality, and of course, celebrities and entertainment. You can see some of the top movies that we recommend from the Moments with Marianne Book Club and Fan Club. There you can also email me if you have any questions, any recommendations, or would just like to say hello at marianne@mariannepastana.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.